Stupid things I've done with narcissists and regret now. Have you ever found yourself doing ridiculous, demeaning things for a narcissist, only to look back and think, what was I thinking? If so, this video is for you. We're ripping off the rose-tinted glasses to expose the humiliating reality of narcissistic relationships. Let's be honest, narcissists are masters at making us question our self-worth and boundaries. With their manipulation tactics, they convince us to tolerate insane behavior that we'd never accept from anyone else. But enough is enough. It's time to get real about the utter absurdity we've endured at the hands of these deranged individuals. Buckle up as we dive deep into the outrageous situations former narcissistic abuse victims have found themselves in. From playing butler on supposed vacations to catering to the narc's every perverted whim, you'll be nodding along while cringing at the sheer lunacy. But don't worry, we're not just here to vent. By the end, you'll have clarity on how to spot and shut down this toxic nonsense before it consumes you. If you have a narcissist in your life and really want to know the truth about regaining control, then you should subscribe to this channel for more upcoming videos about narcissism. You have stumbled upon this channel because you are likely seeking guidance and understanding about dealing with narcissistic behavior. Join this channel because the algorithm recognized your need to learn more about this important topic. By subscribing, you can gain valuable insights and strategies to navigate these challenging dynamics in a healthy manner. Let's get started. First up, a scenario so many can sadly relate to the narcissist's dramatic "I'm sick" song and dance.
The Sicko Circus, weird behaviors of covert narcissists.
Anyone who's been stuck in the narc's twisted reality has fallen for this act. One minute they're perfectly fine, the next they're a crumpled mess, gasping for their deathbed. Why? To ensure you drop everything to cater to their delusional demands, of course. One survivor shared how her narc husband would fake debilitating illnesses, trapping her in a constant cycle of worry and people-pleasing.
He'd claim migraines were making him bedridden, when really he just wanted an excuse to laze around binging Netflix while I ran myself ragged. Doing every single household chore, bringing him special meals and medications, the whole 9 yards, all while missing out on life because the great sickly sultan needed eternal pampering. Looking back, it's mind-blowing how far down the rabbit hole she went. But that's how narcs operate, roping you into their deranged fantasies through fear, obligation, and guilt. Until your entire existence revolves around keeping their sham reality propped up. Speaking of being a glorified servant, let's explore the phenomenon of transforming into the narc's personal butler.
The Bellhop Experience.
Whether it's trips, events, or just daily life, narcs have an infuriating knack for making you their unpaid laborer. Carrying bags, prepping their meals, cleaning up after them like a hotel maid, all while they glide through untouched. One former spouse recalled a particularly enraging vacation memory.
My narc husband would make guarantees before every trip about pulling his weights and doing his share. But of course, the second we arrived, that all went out the window. I'd be the one unloading the car, lugging our suitcases through lobby after lobby, while he childishly waltzed behind free as a bird. If I dared speak up, I'd get hit with the classic, "You know how my back hurts?" or "I'm too tired from planning this whole thing," guilt trips. Next thing I knew, I'm working as a one-woman bellhop and concierge staff just so the Supreme Emperor could fully relax on his premise vacation.
Are you picking up on the pattern here? Narcs are gifted script flippers, taking regular life responsibilities and reframing them into you, selfishly persecuting them if not subserviently obliged. It's a crazy-making mind virus that eats away at our self-respect. And let's not even get started on the awkward hell of being an involuntary, intimate accessory for the narc's voyeuristic delight.
The Department Store Strip Tease.
Yep, we're going there, the narc's knack for suckering us into shockingly inappropriate sexual situations under the guise of closeness. One brave soul shared her humiliating tale.
My narc's husband would insist I accompany him on shopping trips to go lingerie buying for his viewing pleasure. He'd make me try on hyper-sexualized outfits, walking me around the store like a leash show pony while leering at me with that creepy grin. I felt so small, like a piece of meat trapped for his depraved amusement. Yet I went along with it, starved for even tiny intimacy crumbs from a man who clearly viewed me as a disposable sex doll.
Just let that disgust marinate for a second. These predators have no concept of consent or dignity, forcing egregiously uncomfortable acts just to satiate their depraved impulses. It's abusive behavior that should be criminal.
The maid's misery.
Your home should be a sanctuary, but with a narc, it becomes your prison of servitude. One survivor's haunting recollection.
I thought maintaining a clean, welcoming home was just part of being a good spouse. But for the sloppy sultan, it meant unlimited maid service at his whim. I'd spend hours cleaning our house from top to bottom, only for him to traipse in with muddy boots, dropping crumbs and stains everywhere like a tornado sent to mock my efforts. When I finally worked up the courage to ask for basic respect and cleanliness, he'd erupt into a gaslighting word salad.
What? You think you're the maid now? Maybe if you cooked better meals, I wouldn't need to make such a mess.
Suddenly, I'm the ungrateful shrew for simply wanting him to act like an adult instead of a destructive toddler. And just like that, I'm back to scrubbing up after his latest tantrum too, fearful of receiving further verbal lashings for failing to know my place as the family scullery maid. The narc's genius is making you the villain for simply wanting basic consideration in your own home, leaving you a modern-day Cinderella, eternally indebted to their manufactured messes.
The Jesterial Arts.
Laughter can be healing, unless it's being weaponized for the narc's amusement at your expense. As this poor soul found out.
In my narc wife's world, I existed for only one purpose, her own personal court jester, comedy relief gift. She'd constantly make me the punchline to demeaning jokes in front of others, ridiculing my hobbies, my career, even my friends as if their opinions of me mattered more than my own self-worth. No matter how much it stung to have her mock my spirit like that, I had to play along with a smile and a sheepish chuckle. Because if I dared look even slightly annoyed, I'd get hit with immediate blistering criticisms like,
"You just can't take a joke," or "Why do you always take things so seriously?"
My dignity and passions became her literal punchline, all so she could gasp for validation from others by putting me down. Having to perform constant degradation for crumbs of approval, what an utterly soul-crushing way to exist. Narcs truly are merciless sadists.
The yes person's abyss.
For many, the narc downward spiral begins with a seemingly innocent request to be more accommodating and compromising to their partner's wishes. But it's really just a silent dog whistle for total submission and personhood erosion, as this poor soul discovered too late.
At first, I thought I was just being a good supportive partner by deferring to his preferences more often where we ate, while we watched together, even which friends to socialize with. A way to finally shed my selfish reputation, he'd berate me with and show some consideration for once. But before long, the accommodation demands escalated to every single daily decision needing his approval first. What I cooked for dinner, how I dressed, which hobbies I could pursue during our time, it all needed to run through his screening protocol, lest I be punished with harsh criticisms about being inconsiderate again. My entire identity was reduced to his personal choose your own adventure novel to write as he saw fit. I became a living self-help book epigraph, existing only to model the ideal doormat he wanted from a partner. Subtle compliancy spiraling into total dehumanization right under my nose because I never spoke up soon enough.
Chilling how quick that slippery slope descent into utter personhood erasure can happen when you foolishly choose to appease the narc's escalating control impulses and ignore those intuitive gut pangs.
The Punchline Punching Bag.
For some poor souls, there's simply no line the narc won't cross when it comes to publicly degrading and dehumanizing you for their own amusement. Take this harrowing account.
My narc husband's idea of playing around and being funny was to absolutely destroy me with the most vile, demeaning insults and harsh criticisms you can possibly imagine, all while our friends and family smiled on, clueless to the anguish I was internalizing. Whether it was mocking my interests as stupid and embarrassing, making lewd comments about my body and bedroom performance, or just airing out of context private vulnerabilities, I'd shared nothing was off limits from his vitriolic years-long stand-up routine. And I just had to sit there and take it, painted as the uptight shrew killing the mood, if I dared get upset or leave. Because only I knew how awfully personal, premeditated, and malicious his cruel verbal assault really was, each time purposefully crafted to chip away at my confidence and self-worth little by little through public humiliation. How appalling to have my humanity put on stadium speakers and sold for cheap laughs like that. The narc's covert superiority snaked its way out through mocking cruelty at its most pernicious and evil.
The Uncompensated Companion.
Finally, even the closest bonds aren't sacred, merely fresh well to gaslight, manipulate, and pervert into free narcissistic labor by these relentless emotional leashes and takers. As this poor parent shared,
To my narc daughter, I existed for only one purpose, her constant, unending supply of attention and ego stroking. It started with pre-dawn calls demanding I listen to the latest dramatics in her life, constantly inserting herself into my day under the pretense of quality time. Before long, I was her eternal free therapist, life coach, and drinking buddy, all rolled into one. She'd just show up to be doted on for hours on end with no regard for whether I had my own life plans or responsibilities to attend to. My role was clear in her mind, eternal companion without gratitude or compensation of any kind. When I'd try to pivot our conversations towards my own life events, I'd just get immediate dismissive stonewalling or belittling comments about how meaningless it all was compared to her latest Matt Damon-esque crisis plot. Friendships, hobbies, My own marriage, she slowly drained all other aspects of my identity because her needs were the only ones that mattered in her distorted field of vision.
What a gross violation of a sacred parent-child trust and bond. When a narcissist smells the nurturing type, they simply cannot help but endlessly exploit that giving nature until there's nothing left, using your unconditional love as their own personal updrained fuel tank to restart their victim martyr campaigns.
The Unpaid Intern.
Narcs have a knack for sniffing out the eager people-pleasers in life and exploiting them for all they're worth. As this former career woman devastatingly found,
I thought taking on a little extra work from my narcissistic boss would finally earn me the respect and opportunities I craved. But before long, going the extra mile became my new unpaid full-time job I could never escape. It started with small requests reorganizing file systems, pre-reading materials for meetings, other tedious tasks she convincingly pitched as developmental. But then the mission grew into full-scale Cinderella servitude. Suddenly, I was cleaning up her household messes, chauffeuring her kids around, even scrubbing crude stains out of her husband's clothes, all while she took credit for my work and dangled vague promises of reward that never came. Demonstrate more commitment, she'd chide whenever I got overwhelmed. What was I thinking falling for her love-bombing schemes and bogus vision of mentorship? I went from aspiring professional to glorified uncompensated servant without even realizing when I'd become her indentured property.
the narc boss is an insidious predator, making you trade away your self-worth piecemeal for a seat at their table that never truly opens. By the time you wise up, you're just another jaded, exploited worker bee still shoveling their crap.
The Circus Beast.
Sometimes the narc's dehumanization of you manifests in shockingly overt, demeaning ways unfit for even captive animals. As this former partner painfully recalls,
My ex-wife treated me as her literal circus attraction, a freak show exhibit, kept barely human by dominating every aspect of my existence. From obsessively controlling what I wore, ate, who I could see, to pulling cruel public humiliations if I stepped out of line. There was the time she forced me to bark like a depraved dog for a shred of intimacy after days of her silent treatment. Or the endless gauntlet of outfit changes and approval checks I'd be put through before we attended a mundane event. But her piece de resistance was tricking me into shaving my hair into outrageous patterns she found funny by convincing me it would rekindle our fizzled intimacy, leaving me the butt of edgy jokes by all her smug friends for weeks while I sheepishly crawled in my cage. Part of me knew this debasement was cruel beyond words, like performance art designed to strip me of human dignity. But the traumatized people-pleaser simply couldn't say no, fearful of enduring her unbridled rage if I didn't indulge the madwoman's latest degrading choreography.
to be so thoroughly mind-warped into being someone's curated sideshow speaks to the paralyzing brainwashing narcissists are capable of. They make you their feral beast, and the once proud human in you can't even recognize the escape door anymore.
The Muzzled Contrarian.
For narcissists, there are few greater crimes than you voicing an independent thought or deviating from their indoctrinated script descent they'll aggressively work to extinguish. As this former partner rued with regret,
The narc's biggest kink is forcing you to betray yourself, your convictions, just to appease their fragile ego and demented hunger for obedience. In my case, I'd get punished mercilessly for any hint of having nuanced or contrarian views on topics. At first, the scripted wrong think seemed harmless. I'd contradictorily parrot her narratives on politics, petty workplace beefs, you name it, no matter how confounding the flip-flops got. Pretzel tying my brain on a microscale just to keep her approval. But before long, the dissociation stakes raised drastically. To keep peace, I found myself not just mouthing, but embodying beliefs antithetical to my soul, belittling others' life philosophies I once championed, gaslighting friends who saw through the ideological mess I'd become. My reward for such obedient depravity? The temporary salve of "I'm so proud of you," swiftly followed by fresh, emasculating tests of muzzled groupthink, lest I step out of line again. My entire being reduced to a re-engineering personality, re-behavioring project for her entertainment.
in the narc's world, there is no reality beyond what they say is real. No opinions or sense of self-permitted beyond their narrow approved doctrine. I cringe being reminded of the self-betraying actions I made excuses for just to enjoy a few more crumbs of narc bestowed folk intimacy and belonging. Now you're likely recognizing the undeniable truth: being with a narcissist means a life of utter degradation, all under the guise of love. So how did so many of us fall into this trap?
The fear, obligation, guilt, mind prison.
In retrospect, the answer seems obvious. We were conditioned from day one. Narcissists quickly trap their targets in a mental Taliban of fear, obligation, and guilt, fog that overrides our gut instincts. The fear comes from love bombing and future faking a fantasy life together, forming powerful trauma bonds laced with walking on eggshells anxiety. Next, the obligation chains are locked rigid expectations that your purpose is to be an endlessly giving appliance for their needs, no matter how abusive or unreasonable. Finally, the narc weaponizes guilt to paralyze you into staying put, maybe through harsh criticisms wearing down your self-worth, or aggressive playing of the victim, blaming you for their reactions to your imagined offenses. Before long, your boundaries are completely dissolved. Your sense of self splinters into a terrified people-pleasing version, willing to endure any indignity just to keep prodding the narc's affection and avoid their radioactive outbursts. It's an insidious mind trap. One disarming former abuse victims described like this.
I remember feeling so conflicted. Part of me knew this was crazy, degrading behavior. But the bigger part didn't want to be ungrateful or unreasonable by resisting. I was brainwashed into accepting a constant state of dehumanization, just to keep the peace.
So reflect back on the outrageous incidents we've covered: the sham illnesses, the indentured servanthood, the awkward sexual motives. These aren't isolated examples. They're woven into the very fabric of what narcissistic relationships are.
The harsh reality: you've been cult-indoctrinated.
Deprogramming from narcissistic brainwashing isn't easy because you've effectively been inducted into an abusive cult's way of thinking. One controlled through constant love bombing / devaluation cycles, fear, and having all sense of self surgically extracted. Here's a harsh truth if you stuck around for the sickness theatrics, inappropriate demands, or servile roles talked about today, then you drank the narcissist's fog-laced Kool-Aid. Plain and simple. But don't beat yourself up. These toxic predators are incredibly skilled at what they do. Love bombing amidst your vulnerability, seeding insecurity addictions, chipping away at your boundaries through conditioning, that's their mission from day one, with new sources of fuel. The good news? As shocking as these wake-up calls feel, they're also the first step towards glorious emancipation.
Breaking free, the Great Narc De-Programming.
See, once you accept you've been subsumed into a narcissist's twisted reality, the devious spell starts cracking. Like a radiant sunrise burning off the narc's dark spiritual smog. Because you no longer reflexively make excuses for the crazy stuff they put you through. No more yes, buts defending their indefensible conduct, rationalizing jaw-dropping transgressions as somehow your fault. And thank goodness for that. Coming to that realization puts you back in the driver's seat of your life. The first pebble that starts an avalanche of reclaiming your personal power, redefining your worth, and rediscovering your self-respect. It means never again compromising away dignity by dutifully lingering shopping at their demand. Or playing salt wife to their endless false sickbed routine. A full emancipation from that degrading servant's life of, and utter shunning of their depraved reality moving forward. Best of all, this marks the narc's dissolution of their prime source of fuel, your confusion and compliance. With marvelous self-realization, you effectively unlock the shackles, bounding you to their toxic cult, becoming an emission of scentless smoke they can no longer ingest. So if you're still stuck in that narcissistic reformation prison, know there is a path out. One paved with radical self-acceptance, brutal boundary setting, and a whole lot of healing to rewrite the narratives seared into your psyche. You just need to make that brave first step away from their lunacy. Which brings us to our final truth bomb, the gift of never relapsing into this soul-eroding mayhem ever again.
Resurrection and reclamation.
See, once you've gotten a true glimpse behind the curtain of how disturbingly demented narcs truly are, it's pretty hard to unsee it. You become virtually narc repellent going forward. Why? Because you can now clearly recognize all the love bombing tricks, trauma bonding antics, and subtle fog spraying tactics for what they are. Your narc amnesia has been lifted for good. So not only can you exterminate current toxic relationships, but future ones are dead on arrival too. Miserable narc developers stand no chance of breaking ground as soon as you detect those first puffs of grandiosity, blame-shifting impacts, pity play antics, or really any of their old hat manipulation games. You'll just say,
"Nope, not this time, pal,"
and refuse to indulge their sickness, leaving them powerlessly sputtering as their abuse engines stall out. In that moment, you'll likely feel immense gratitude for all the growth catalysts, as enraging as those lessons were to endure, because they gave you X-ray vision into these predators' true unvarnished depravity, an immunity forged against ever letting yourself get gaslit or debased like that again. Enlightened, you move forward free of self-doubt, devoted to only nurturing connections that truly see and celebrate the authentic, radiant you, reveling in your rebirth from the narc's ashes to a life of sovereignty and peace.
Subscribe for the Reclamation Roadmap.
I know that getting deprogrammed from a narc's bunker mentality isn't easy. It may seem downright impossible based on the intense trauma you've endured. But I'm here to tell you it 100% can be done. Your reawakening is imminent through educating yourself on these predators' psychological warfare while restoring self-belief through daily healing work. So make that commitment today and hit subscribe for a community lifting you up towards glorious rebirth and reclamation. I'm not just teaching about uncovering narc tactics and undoing their brainwashing on you. I'll be sharing techniques to demolish those mental prisons they worked so hard constructing, from escaping trauma bonds to banishing those internalized shame gremlins they planted in your psyche.